When my husband whispered those words, something inside me went completely still. It was a quiet afternoon at the mall, the kind of day when the world feels soft and harmless. Families laughing, the smell of coffee drifting from a nearby cafe, light music playing in the background. I was inside the fitting room, holding a simple blue dress against me. I remember smiling at my reflection, thinking how rare it was for him to come shopping with me. For once, we had time together, or so I believed. But then I heard it, his voice, low and hurried, just outside the curtain. She didn't notice. The transfer went through. My heart skipped. It wasn't just what he said. It was the way he said it. Careful, nervous, as if those words weren't meant for my ears. For a moment, I froze. Maybe he was on the phone. Maybe I heard it wrong. But then came a faint reply. A woman's voice, soft and teasing. She really has no idea, does she? My hand trembled. The hanger slipped from my fingers and hit the floor with a dull sound. That was the moment my world shifted. Not broken yet, but quietly cracking. I didn't rush out. I didn't shout. I just stood there, staring at my own reflection, realizing that sometimes betrayal doesn't roar, it whispers. My name is Ananya. I'm 45 years old. I've been married to Raj for 20 years. We weren't perfect, but we were steady. Or at least that's what I wanted to believe. Raj was always the practical one, calm, smart with numbers, the kind of man who could make sense of bills, taxes, and all the complicated things I never wanted to understand. I trusted him completely. He handled our finances, our savings, even my little jewelry purchases. I used to joke, if something happens to you, I won't even know which bank we use. And he would laugh and say, don't worry, you'll never have to find out. We had one son, Arav. He was studying in another city then, busy with his first job, calling us every other weekend. He was the bridge that kept us both connected, even during our quiet days. Our home was small but warm, morning tea on the balcony, evening news on the sofa. Raj liked his routines, and I liked watching him in them. Small things, like the way he folded the newspaper exactly in half, or how he always checked if I had eaten. Love, I've learned, is often silent. It's not about big words or gifts. It's in the way someone remembers how you take your tea. For years, I felt safe in that silence. But silence can also hide things.
It started months before the fitting room. Little things. He became distracted, often looking at his phone late at night. When I asked, he'd say, just work. He started locking his phone, something he'd never done before. Once I noticed a message pop up when he was in the shower. A woman's name. I told myself not to be that kind of wife, the suspicious one. Raj had always been faithful, always kind. But kindness can sometimes disguise distance. I remember one evening at dinner. I made his favorite curry, but he barely touched it. He kept scrolling, replying, smiling faintly. Who's that? I asked lightly. He looked up surprised. No one, just office. Office seems funny tonight, I said, half smiling. He chuckled, not meeting my eyes. We're joking about some reports. I wanted to believe him. I really did. Because believing is easier than facing the fear that someone you love might be slipping away. That weekend, he suggested we go shopping. He said, you never buy anything for yourself. Let's get you something nice. I remember how happy I felt hearing that. I even called Arav, telling him, your father's taking me out, can you believe it? It felt like old times, the two of us hand in hand, walking through the mall. That's why the fitting room moment hit me so hard. When I came out, he was alone, smiling as if nothing had happened. You took so long, he said cheerfully. Did you like the dress? I looked at him, at the man I thought I knew, and forced a smile. Yes, it's beautiful. Inside, I was breaking.
That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed every second in my head. His whisper, the other woman's voice, the words transfer went through. Transfer? What transfer? Money? A message? Something else? I wanted to ask him, but I was afraid of the answer. Instead, I lay beside him in bed, listening to his breathing, wondering how long he'd been lying beside me while keeping secrets. There's this strange pain in pretending to sleep next to someone you no longer trust. Days passed. I watched him carefully, the way he checked his phone, how he smiled at random moments, how he left early for meetings. Once, I followed him downstairs and saw him talking on the phone near the gate. His tone was soft, almost tender. He noticed me and quickly ended the call. "Who was it?" I asked, quietly. "Office client," he replied without hesitation. I nodded. I didn't argue. I simply said, "All right." But inside, I was beginning to understand that silence would not protect me anymore. The morning after that, I made his tea as usual. He came to the table, reading messages. "Raj," I said softly, "do you ever feel like we've grown distant?" He looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we don't talk like before." He smiled faintly. "We're just busy, Ananya. Life changes." "Do you ever miss how it used to be?" He reached for my hand and said, "Of course I do." But even as he said it, his phone buzzed again, and that touch, that simple hand on mine, felt like habit, not love. That evening, I sat alone on the balcony, watching the rain. I thought about all the small lies people tell, not because they want to hurt you, but because they've already started living another life. Sometimes I think betrayal begins long before the act itself. It begins with disconnection. The next few days moved slowly, too slowly. When you start doubting someone you love, every small thing becomes a clue. Every word, every glance, every phone vibration turns into a question. Raj didn't change drastically. That was the hardest part. He was still kind, still helpful, still normal. But normal can sometimes hide the truth very well. He still asked, "Did you eat?" He still reminded me to take my medicines. He still kissed my forehead before leaving for work. But I noticed something new. He never looked me in the eye for too long. His gaze always wandered, as if afraid that if he stared too deep, the truth might spill out. I started keeping track of things, his timings, his calls, his moods, not because I wanted to catch him, but because I wanted to understand when I lost him. It's strange how love can make you both strong and small at the same time. One afternoon, when he was in the shower, his phone buzzed. Once, twice, then 3 times. The name that flashed made my heart thump. Ritika. I didn't know any Ritika. The messages came fast. "Thank you for today. Can't believe we pulled it off." She didn't notice anything, right? I remember staring at the screen, feeling my pulse in my throat. It was the same word again. She didn't notice. The same phrase I had heard outside the fitting room. I didn't open the chat. I didn't want to cross that line yet. Instead, I took a photo of the screen with my own phone. My hands were shaking so badly, the image came out blurry. When he came out of the shower, I was sitting on the bed, pretending to scroll through recipes. He smiled. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yes, just looking at something online." He kissed my forehead, told me he'd be home late because of meetings, and left. The moment the door closed, I felt the silence around me turn heavy. It's amazing how a home can feel unfamiliar once trust leaves it. That evening, I sat at the dining table with his untouched plate in front of me. I couldn't eat. I just kept staring at his chair, wondering if he'd ever sit across from me with the same heart again. I remembered our early days, the laughter, the arguments, the way he used to call me his anchor. And I wondered, when did the anchor become invisible to him? The next day, I asked casually, "Who's Ratika?" He paused for half a second, just half, but I saw it. Then he smiled. "She's from the new branch, works under me." "Why?" I shrugged. "Nothing. You mentioned her name the other day." "I did?" He laughed lightly. "Oh, maybe. She's young, very sharp. Reminds me of how hardworking you used to be." The word stung more than he realized. How hardworking I used to be. It sounded like a quiet dismissal of everything I had been doing for 20 years. The house, the care, the waiting. I smiled faintly. "I see." He kissed my cheek and went to work. After that, I couldn't rest. I started checking the phone bills. There were long calls to an unknown number, sometimes at midnight. One Sunday, he said he was going to meet a client. I said nothing, but after he left, I followed him in an auto rickshaw. I felt ridiculous, like a detective in my own marriage, but sometimes the heart needs to see what it already knows. He stopped at a cafe, not his office. A woman was waiting there, maybe in her early 30s. Pretty, confident. When he saw her, he smiled in a way I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't the smile of friendship. It was softness, familiarity. He leaned forward, brushed her hair back, and whispered something that made her laugh. I felt my throat tighten. I didn't stay long. I turned away before he could see me. On the ride back home, I cried quietly. The driver didn't say a word. Maybe he'd seen this kind of silence before. That night, when Raj came home, I was sitting in the dark. He turned on the light. "Ananya, why are you sitting like this?" I looked up at him. "Were you at the cafe today?" He blinked. "Yes, meeting." "With Rithika?" He hesitated again, that same half-second pause. "Yes, she came to discuss some client files." I nodded slowly. "I see. And did you touch her hair, too?" He froze. His face changed. "What are you talking about?" "I saw you, Raj." The silence that followed was long, heavy. He ran a hand through his hair and sighed. "Ananya, it's not what you think." I smiled faintly. "Then what is it, Raj?" He didn't answer. He just walked to the balcony, staring into the dark night. That night, I realized something about love. It doesn't die with noise. It dies quietly, in small breaths, in unspoken apologies, in the sound of footsteps walking away instead of explaining. He slept on the couch that night. I didn't ask him to. He just did. Maybe guilt needs its own space to breathe. The next morning, I finally looked deeper. I checked our bank statements. Raj had transferred a large sum, not to Rithika's name, but to another account. Something hidden, something he didn't tell me about. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about secrets. I sat at the dining table for hours, staring at the printout. Maybe he was helping someone. Maybe it was work. Maybe it was her. I didn't know which hurt more, that he was lying, or that I was still defending him in my heart. That evening, my old friend Neha came over. She took one look at me and said, "You're not okay." I smiled weakly. "Just tired." She didn't believe me. Tired women don't forget to eat for 2 days. So I told her everything. The whisper in the fitting room, the messages, the cafe, the transfer. Neha held my hand and said, "Ananya, you don't deserve this. You've given him everything. Don't let him take your peace too." Her words were gentle, but firm. I nodded, tears welling up. What should I do? She said softly, "First, stop being afraid of the truth." That night, I waited for him to come home. He walked in late, tired, smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine. "Raj," I said quietly, "we need to talk." He sighed. "Ananya, not tonight, please. I've had a long day." "I've had a long year, Raj." He looked at me then, really looked, and for a second I saw guilt flicker in his eyes. "What do you want to know?" he asked finally. "I want to know the truth." He sat down, rubbing his forehead. "It's complicated." I said softly, "Make it simple for me." He looked tired. "Ritika, she needed help. Her father was sick. I transferred money to help her." "And the secret calls, the cafe meetings, the whispers?" He hesitated. "She's going through a lot. I didn't want you to misunderstand." I gave a small laugh, quiet, almost bitter. "So you lied to me to protect her." "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it, Raj?" He didn't answer. His silence was worse than any confession. That night, after he went to bed, I sat in the kitchen staring at the flickering light above the stove. The truth might not have been complete, but I understood one thing clearly. Trust doesn't survive in half-truths. He said he helped her, but the tenderness I saw, the messages, the way he hid it wasn't just about helping someone. It was emotional, maybe even love. And the scariest part, I wasn't angry. I was just empty. Over the next few days, we barely spoke. He tried to act normal again, but the air between us had changed. Once, he placed a cup of tea beside me and said softly, "You're quiet lately." I replied, "Maybe I finally learned from you." He didn't respond. He just walked away. I stopped waiting for his calls. I stopped cooking his favorite meals. I started sleeping early, even when I couldn't. I began to reclaim silence, not the scared kind, but the peaceful one. Every night I would write in a small notebook. Not letters, not plans, just thoughts. Today, I didn't cry. Today, I smiled at myself in the mirror. Today, I began to let go. A few weeks later, Arav came home for a weekend. He sensed the tension immediately. "Ma, what's going on between you and Dad?" I smiled softly. "Nothing you need to worry about, Beta." He frowned. "Did he do something?" I looked at my son, his face, his concern, and realized that some truths shouldn't be passed down. Pain doesn't need to become inheritance. I said gently, "Sometimes people just grow apart, but we're okay." He didn't look convinced, but he nodded. That night, he hugged me a little tighter before going to bed. A few days later, Raj brought me flowers. He placed them on the table awkwardly. "For you," he said. I looked at the bouquet. Beautiful, colorful, lifeless. I smiled faintly. "Thank you." He sat down. "Ananya, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you." I didn't say anything. I just listened. He continued, "It was never serious with her. It was just A mistake. I asked quietly, "Then why did you lie for so long?" He looked down. "Because I didn't want to lose you." For the first time, I felt tears in my eyes, not for what he did, but for how late the truth came. Love doesn't disappear overnight. It fades slowly, like the last light at sunset. You can still see it for a while, even when it's already gone. I wasn't ready to forgive him yet, but I also wasn't ready to hate him. Because between love and hate, there's a quiet space called acceptance, and that's where I began to live.
The morning after the flowers, I woke before dawn. The house was quiet, still half asleep, and the first light from the window fell across the table where the bouquet stood. The petals had already started to droop. I watched them for a long time. It felt like a picture of us, beautiful ones, now fading gently without a sound. Raj was still asleep on the couch. His face looked tired, almost childlike, the way he used to look years ago when we were happy. I wanted to touch his hair, to forgive him right there, but my hand stopped halfway. Something inside me whispered, "Not yet." Later that morning, a courier arrived. It was a white envelope from the bank, my name on it. I opened it casually, thinking it might be a routine update. But when I unfolded the paper, I felt my heart slow down. It was a loan confirmation letter, a loan I never applied for. Amount? 5 lakhs. Purpose? Personal transfer. Authorized by Raj Malhotra. I sat down slowly, reading the words again and again. He had taken a loan in my name. So that was the transfer. Not money sent to help someone, money taken, using me. I felt cold, like the floor had vanished under my feet. That evening, I waited. Raj came home late, loosened his tie, and said, "Ananya, I picked up dinner. Let's eat." I held up the envelope. "What is this?" He froze. His smile faded. "Where did you get that?" "It came today, in my name, a loan I never took." He ran a hand over his face. "Ananya, please, I was going to tell you." "When, Raj? After everything was gone?" He pulled out a chair and sat down, his shoulders slumping. "It was temporary. I needed money for a business deal. It's not what you think." "Business deal? Or Ritika?" He looked away. That silence was my answer.
He spoke slowly, as if every word hurt. She was starting a boutique. I helped her. She promised to return it. I didn't want you to worry." I laughed softly, without joy. "So you took a loan in my name to fund another woman's dream?" He didn't reply. I could see guilt, but also a strange calm in him, like someone who had already accepted his mistake long before being caught. "Raj," I said, "why didn't you trust me enough to tell me the truth?" He whispered, "Because I knew you'd leave." I stood up and walked to the balcony. Outside, the city lights were blinking like tiny reminders that life was still moving somewhere else, faster, brighter. He followed me. "I'll fix it, Ananya. I promise. I'll pay back everything." I turned to him slowly. "It's not about money anymore. It's about what we were." He looked at me helplessly. "I made a mistake." "Mistake?" I repeated softly. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. This is betrayal." He tried to reach for my hand, but I stepped back. For the first time in 20 years, I saw a man I didn't recognize standing in my home. And for the first time, I realized that love can survive many things, but not deceit. He slept in the guest room that night. I sat on our bed, surrounded by memories that suddenly felt borrowed. The photo frames, the wedding album, the pair of mugs that said Mr. and Mrs. I opened my diary and wrote, "Tonight, I met the truth. It didn't shout. It just looked at me and waited." The next morning, while Raj was at work, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was gentle, hesitant. "Ma'am, this is Ritika." I froze. She continued, "I'm sorry for calling you, but I couldn't sleep. Raj told me everything came out." I said nothing. She added, "He didn't mean to hurt you. He just wanted to help me. My father's treatment." "Stop," I interrupted softly. "Does he love you?" There was silence. Then a shaky whisper. "I don't know." I closed my eyes. "Then he's lost both of us." Before she could answer, I hung up. For the rest of that day, I moved through the house like a shadow. Every room carried a memory. The kitchen smelled of old laughter. The bedroom smelled of distance. I realized how fragile everything was, how years of togetherness could be undone by a few lies and one careless whisper. Sometimes it's not the betrayal itself that breaks you. It's realizing that the person who promised to protect you became the reason you need protection. The next morning, I went to the bank. The manager looked surprised when I explained. "Ma'am, this was a joint account. Your husband signed for both." I nodded. "Can it be reversed?" He hesitated. "If both parties agree, yes." "I'll handle it," I said. As I walked out, I felt strangely light. Painful truth had replaced uncertainty, and truth, no matter how heavy, is easier to carry than doubt. That evening, Raj came home early. He looked tired, almost defeated. "I went to the bank," he said quietly. "They told me you were there." "Yes. I've canceled the loan. I'll sell my bike, some shares, whatever it takes." I nodded. "That's good." He sat down opposite me. "Ananya, please, give me one more chance." I looked at him for a long time. His eyes were red, his hands trembling slightly. I remembered the man he used to be, the one who held my hand through every storm. But the man sitting before me was someone who created the storm himself. "I don't know if I can," I whispered. "Something broke." That night, I went to the balcony again. Rain was falling softly, just like it did the day I followed him. I thought about forgiveness. It isn't about forgetting. It's about setting yourself free from the weight of what someone else did. Maybe someday I would forgive him, but not now. Not while the wound was still open. I whispered to the rain, "I just need peace." A week later, Raj packed a small bag. He said, "I'll stay at my friend's place for a while." I nodded. I didn't ask him to stay. I didn't ask where he was going. As he walked to the door, he paused. "I never stopped loving you, Ananya." I smiled faintly. "Maybe that's the problem, Raj. You loved me, but you forgot to be honest." He looked at me for a long time, then left. The sound of the door closing was gentle, but it echoed for hours. The first night alone was the hardest. The house felt too quiet, too large. I cooked dinner, but couldn't eat. Yet, somewhere beneath the ache, there was also relief. No more half-truths, no more waiting for a phone to stop ringing, no more pretending everything was fine. Just me and the truth. I made a cup of tea and sat by the window. For the first time in months, I felt my breathing steady.
2 days later, a letter arrived. It was from Raj, handwritten. "Ananya, I know sorry will never be enough. I can't explain why I did what I did. Maybe I was trying to feel useful again, to prove something. I forgot that the only thing worth proving was my honesty to you. I'll repay every rupee, but I know the real debt is different. If you ever find space in your heart to forgive me, I'll be grateful. If not, I'll still understand. Take care of yourself. Raj. I read it twice. There were tear marks on the paper. His or mine, I couldn't tell. I folded it carefully and placed it inside my diary. Not because I forgave him, but because it was part of my story now. Days turned into weeks. I joined a small art class nearby, something I had always wanted to do but never found time for. At first, my hands trembled while holding the brush, but soon colors started to make sense again. One evening while painting, I realized I hadn't checked my phone all day. That small piece felt like victory. Healing doesn't come like thunder. It comes in small, quiet ways. An extra breath, a full night's sleep, a meal cooked just for yourself. A month later, Raj called. "Can we meet?" he asked. I agreed. We met at the same cafe where I once saw him with Ritika. This time the air felt different, gentler, older, like two people standing among the ruins of what once was. He looked thinner. "You look well," he said. "I'm learning to be," I replied. He nodded. "I paid off most of the loan. The rest will be done soon." "Thank you." He took a deep breath. "Ananya, I don't expect anything. I just wanted to see you once to say sorry properly." I looked at him and said quietly, "I believe you're sorry, but sorry doesn't rebuild trust. It only starts the journey." He smiled sadly. "Then maybe that's enough for now." We sat in silence for a few minutes. Then he stood up and left. No drama, no promises, just quiet acceptance. As I walked back home, I felt the evening breeze on my face. The same city that once held my heartbreak now felt calm again. I realized that endings don't always come with anger. Sometimes they come with understanding. The fitting room whisper that once shattered me had now turned into a distant memory, a moment that forced me to open my eyes. I learned that love is not blind. It chooses to see and stay anyway, until it finally learns to walk away with dignity. And that was my turning point.
Morning light has a way of softening everything. It touches the walls, the curtains, even the old clock that had stopped ticking months ago. That morning, when I woke, the house looked less like a place of loss and more like a place that was waiting to be lived in again. Raj's shoes were no longer by the door. His toothbrush was gone from the sink. For the first time, I didn't feel an ache at the sight. I felt space, quiet, honest space. Days began to follow a rhythm that belonged only to me. I woke early, brewed tea just the way I liked, stronger, less milk. I sat on the balcony and listened to the city stretch awake. I started keeping a small notebook of gratitude. At first, I could barely find things to write, but soon the pages filled. Morning breeze, neighbor's child waving, the courage to breathe without fear. Healing was not dramatic. It was ordinary, almost invisible, but I could feel it, like skin growing back where it once burned. The art class became my sanctuary. At first, I painted flowers and still life, but slowly, stories started to appear on canvas. Rainy windows, empty chairs, a woman standing by the sea. One day, the teacher asked, "Who is she?" pointing to the woman in my painting. I smiled and said, "Someone who finally found peace." The class laughed softly, but inside, I meant it. Each stroke of color felt like rewriting a small piece of my life. And for the first time, my hands didn't shake. At night, I began writing letters to Raj, not to post, just to understand my own heart. Dear Raj, today I watered the plants you once forgot to. They're growing again. Dear Raj, I thought of calling you when I saw something funny on TV, but I didn't. Not because of anger, but because I wanted the silence to rest. Sometimes I tore the letters, sometimes I kept them. But every word I wrote took a little weight off my chest. One weekend, Arav came home again. He hugged me at the door, longer this time. Ma, you look happy, he said with surprise. I'm trying, I smiled. He nodded. Dad called me last week. He said you're painting now. Yes, it helps. Arav sat beside me. He sounded lonely. I looked down at my cup of tea. Loneliness is sometimes the price of our choices. He was quiet for a moment, then asked, Do you think you'll forgive him? I said softly, Maybe forgiveness isn't a single moment, Betha. It's a path you walk slowly, one truth at a time. When Diwali came, I decorated the house anyway. I thought it would feel empty, but it didn't. Light has a way of making even broken walls look gentle. Neighbors dropped by, children ran through the corridor. I handed out sweets, laughed, even danced a little. Late that night, standing by the diyas, I whispered to myself, See, Ananya, you're still here. That whisper felt stronger than any promise I'd ever made. A month later, one afternoon, someone rang the doorbell. When I opened it, Raj stood there, holding an envelope. Hi, he said quietly. I wanted to give this to you. Inside were papers showing the loan cleared and closed. No more debt, not even in your name. Thank you, I replied simply. He looked around the house, the lamps, the plants, the new painting on the wall. You've changed everything, he said softly. Maybe everything needed changing. He nodded. You look peaceful. I am. He hesitated. Can I sit for a minute? I agreed. We sat across from each other, the same table that once held our arguments. The silence between us felt lighter now, no more heavy words waiting to be said. He finally spoke. I'm seeing a counselor. I'm trying to understand why I did what I did. I'm glad, I said. I don't expect you to come back, he added quickly. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to be better. I looked at him and realized that for the first time in months, I wasn't angry. The wound had become a scar, visible, but no longer bleeding. Raj, I said gently, I hope you find peace too. He smiled, eyes wet. Take care of yourself, Ananya. And then he left again, this time without guilt, without lies, just quiet respect. After that day, I decided to volunteer at a community center nearby. We taught art to women who had stopped believing in themselves, widows, single mothers, women starting over. The first day, I told them my story. Not all of it, just enough. I said, sometimes life breaks us so we can rebuild ourselves better. They nodded, some with tears, some with hope. And in their faces, I saw reflections of my own journey. Every class felt like therapy. Each woman I helped reminded me that strength is contagious. One evening, after class, I sat at my desk and wrote something new, not to Raj, but to me. Dear Ananya, you waited too long for someone else to choose you. Now it's your turn. Choose peace over fear. Choose truth over comfort. Choose yourself, again and again. I placed that letter inside my diary, next to Raj's. Two sides of the same life, hurt and healing. Months passed. One morning, the rain returned, the same kind of soft drizzle from the day everything changed. I made tea and stood by the window, listening to the sound. The city smelled clean again. For the first time, the rain didn't remind me of betrayal. It reminded me of beginning. I whispered, "Thank you." Not to anyone, but to life itself. That evening, I received a text. "I saw your paintings on the community page. They're beautiful. I'm proud of you." I stared at the message for a moment, then replied, "Thank you, Raj. I hope you're doing well." Nothing more, nothing less. Just two people acknowledging that once they loved, and now they lived separately, peacefully. Ara visited again before moving abroad for work. He hugged me tightly and said, "Ma, I'm proud of you. You're the strongest person I know." I smiled. Strength isn't loud, Beta. It's just choosing kindness when you could choose bitterness. He nodded, eyes glistening. "Will you be okay alone?" "I'm not alone. I have myself. That's enough." He laughed softly. "You sound like the women in your paintings." "Maybe I finally became one of them," I replied. Months later, our art center held an exhibition. We displayed works by all the women. My painting, "The Woman by the Sea," was placed in the center. Below it, I had written a small caption. "Sometimes the waves don't drown you. They wash you clean." People stopped and read it, some smiling, some tearing up. In that moment, I felt the circle complete. The woman who once stood in silence inside a fitting room was now standing beneath her own light, unafraid. After the exhibition, I walked home under the stars. The streetlights flickered. The night was cool. When I reached home, I brewed tea and sat on the balcony again. Same place, same cup, but a different heart. I thought about everything that had happened, the whispers, the lies, the tears, the calm that followed. And I realized that every ending is a doorway, not a wall. You just have to gather enough courage to walk through it. If someone had told me that day in the fitting room that I would one day thank life for that whisper, I would have laughed. But today, I understand. That whisper didn't end my story. It began a new one. It taught me that peace isn't something someone else gives you. It's something you grow, quietly, inside your own heart. Love is not about possession. It's about truth, trust, and the freedom to be yourself. And sometimes, losing someone is the only way to find who you are meant to be. Camera fades to the balcony at dusk. Teacup steaming, diary open beside it. Ananya's voice gentle, steady. When my husband whispered she didn't notice the transfer went through, I thought my life had ended. But it was just changing shape. Pain taught me stillness. Stillness taught me strength. And strength taught me peace. The screen fades to black. Soft music lingers. A piano note that sounds like forgiveness. It's been almost a year since that day in the fitting room. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. I still remember the exact color of that blue dress, the way the light fell across the curtain, the sound of his whisper that changed everything. But now, when I think of it, I no longer feel pain. I feel understanding. That whisper was not just the sound of betrayal. It was the sound of truth arriving quietly, without warning. And truth, no matter how much it hurts, always sets you free in the end. These days, my mornings are slow and peaceful. I wake before sunrise, open the balcony door, and let the breeze touch my face. I make my tea, water the plants, feed the stray cats that wait near the gate.
Sometimes I laugh, remembering how much I used to rush through life, trying to be the perfect wife, the perfect mother. Now I just try to be human, and that feels enough. Peace isn't loud. It's not fireworks or grand achievements. It's the quiet satisfaction of knowing that you survived what once felt impossible.
Last week, Raj called again. It was a short conversation, gentle, polite. He said, Arav told me you're planning to open a small art studio. That's wonderful. I smiled. Yes, it's still small, but it feels right. He paused and said softly, You sound happy, Ananya. I am, I replied. I hope you are too. There was a silence that felt like respect, not regret. Then he said, Take care, and the line disconnected. When I set the phone down, I realized how far we had both come, from hiding truths to wishing each other peace. That, I think, is what forgiveness truly means. A month later, I opened my little studio. It's on the corner of a quiet street, filled with lights and laughter and color. We call it Second Chances. The women who come there are like me, people who have been bruised but not broken. We paint, we talk, we share stories over cups of chai. Sometimes when I see them smile again, I feel something inside me heal a little more too. Helping others mend their hearts became the way I mended mine. One evening, Ara video called me from his new city. Behind him, I saw books, a messy desk, and a new kind of joy on his face. Ma, he said, you seem lighter these days. I laughed. Maybe I finally learned how to let go of what wasn't meant for me. He smiled. You're teaching me that too. Not every ending is failure. No, I said. Some endings are just life's way of giving you space for something better. We talked about his work, his friends, the weather, and as the call ended, I thought, this is what love should feel like. Simple, honest, peaceful. When I look back now, I realize I didn't lose everything that day. I lost a version of myself that was afraid to be alone. The woman who walked into that fitting room was scared of change. The woman who walked out months later had faced the storm and found her center. Pain, I've learned, doesn't destroy you. It introduces you to your true strengths. There will always be people who disappoint you. There will always be moments that shake your faith. But if you hold on with gentleness, with honesty, you'll discover that your heart knows how to heal. Imagine a quiet street at dusk. The lights from my studio glow through the window. Inside, women are laughing, brushes moving across canvas, and among those paintings hangs one of a blue dress. Simple, calm, still. It's not a symbol of pain anymore. It's a reminder of how far I've come. As I lock the door each night, I whisper a small prayer. Thank you for everything that left me. Because of it, I learned what was meant to stay. The camera lingers on the doorway, then slowly fades to black. We all have a fitting room moment in life, a quiet second when truth arrives, uninvited. It hurts, it confuses, it shatters what we thought we knew. But if we listen closely, that same moment also opens a new door. Mine began with a whisper I wasn't supposed to hear, and it ended here with peace, purpose, and the gentle knowing that sometimes the heart breaks only to make room for light.